So there was a time in my creative career, 2022 to be exact, where I debated quitting. And I want to tell you about it. I was really questioning a huge part of my identity, which was Maddie, the actor, Maddie, the creator, Maddie, the storyteller. And a question that kept coming up for me was, who am I when I'm not leading with the part of myself that is hooked to this creative career? Who am I when this thing that's defined me, this storyteller identity, this actor identity, this voiceover identity, who am I when this thing that has defined me for the better part of my life suddenly feels so disconnected? It stops feeling like it's mine. I had to answer this question, and it was a really challenging thing to do. And it was one of the best things that I ever had to do. This was like one of the best periods of my life. And it was so rewarding, but it was so confronting. And we're going to talk about that today. So welcome to an episode of Get Messy. This is a mindset space for creatives who are trying to build sustainable and successful careers without losing their sanity. I'm Maddie. I've been a professional performer for well over a decade. I am currently in grad school to become a therapist, and I am the friend who's never going to BS you about what it takes to stay in the game. And this episode, we're going to keep it real. It's a little bit of storytelling in the beginning of like me and my personal story, because I think it will offer some much needed context into why I was feeling the way I was feeling during this messy middle of my creative journey, and how I helped myself out of it. So just to give some context for everybody, I started acting when I was like around 10 years old. I was an incredibly shy child, like gripping onto my mom's pants, hands sweating, like sobbing at the thought of like a play date. Cause I was just so uncomfortable in my own skin. And I would have fun sometimes once I got there and once I like was forced into it, but the social anxiety around all of it was just intense. I loved to read. I loved to write. I loved to make up stories. I would like act out the different characters, in the books that I was reading. I mean, I would fly through books. I just was obsessed with reading. And again, like kind of putting myself into these stories. So my parents wanted to put me into acting classes and some improv classes to try to gain some confidence. It was not even at all to like become an actor or learn how to act. It was like, how can we help her start facing this like horrendous shyness that was keeping me away from a lot of opportunities in my life, even at 10 years old. I didn't really have a lot of friends. I was just so uncomfortable and socially awkward and really closed off. And so this was one of their ways of trying to help me start facing this social anxiety and the shyness. And jokes on them, because then I loved it. And again, some of my first acting classes were like crying, sweating, just like freaking out. But like very shortly after that, there was something that I just found completely magical about improv and about acting classes and getting a scene assignment or getting like a play and like going home and like doing the same thing that I was doing with my books. But now I was like getting to come in and like act with someone else. There was something about it that like still bewilders me to this day, that I just wanted more. Any acting class my mom could sign me up for, and she would started putting me in local plays and doing local theater. It's crazy how I just felt so aligned with it. Felt like it was a part of me. It was so contradictory to the shyness that I had. And so after, a couple of years of doing classes, I started like pursuing any semblance of the industry in Chicago. I would go to do different agency meetings, and my mom would help me do self-submissions. So I'm probably like 11 or 12 at this point in time, and I got told a shitload of no's, but then eventually a couple people said yes. And so I started auditioning for like commercial print and commercials, because that is at the time what they had in Chicago. We really did not have the TV and film industry that they have now. I probably wouldn't have left if I was like in the city the way that they had it now. So I started doing some commercials. I actually booked my first commercial audition I ever went out on for Elmer's Paint-Tastics, which was essentially, it looked like a pencil and it had like a paintbrush tip on the end of it and like paint inside. And so you could like watercolor paint with like the paint inside the paintbrush. First audition, first commercial I've ever booked. It was great. I got to go to Columbus, Ohio with my dad to film it with these other 3 young girls and their moms in this like campground site. It was so cool. And then I didn't book another thing for a really long time. And my grandparents, my parents both worked, my grandparents would be driving me all over Kingdom Come in Chicago, taking me to different auditions or print jobs that I booked. I started doing like different acting conventions and competitions, and you would go and perform them at this competition, and agents and managers would be able to watch you and decide if they wanted to rep you. And at the time, all of the agents and managers were really primarily in LA, but LA or New York. And I was like, I want this so bad. I truly do not know how I convinced my parents to let me not go to normal high school, but go to high school online. So it was called like independent study. Like I had teachers. It wasn't like my mom or dad was teaching me, and then go to LA. And I was there for like my first pilot season, and it was like my dad would stay with me for 6 weeks, and my mom would stay with me for 2 weeks, and my grandparents would stay with me for 6 weeks, like rotating through different family members to like help try to make this work. And I was in the extended stay in Burbank. I think it's still there in like the Target parking lot of the Empire Center. If you know, you know. That's where we were living. Then the writer's strike happened. Ooh, not the most recent one. The one where I was probably like 15 at this point. That writer's strike happened. And so I ended up coming home for a while, still going to online school, but still like taking my acting classes, trying to like reconfigure what the next phase of all of this was. It was obviously difficult because I wasn't 18 yet. And so I ended up graduating high school in my independent study online school and went back to LA when I was 17 years old, living with a family friend acquaintance. It was like him and his mom. And yeah, I've been like truly pounding the pavement since I was 17 years old in LA. Ever since. I went to college online. I think too, also I have to say, I was a very responsible kid. I knew if I messed up, like if I did something to like get in trouble, like I knew my ass was coming home so fast. And so I think obviously they had a lot of trust in me. They also put like the fear of God in me, and I just wanted it so bad. I loved acting so much, but part of it is I had to go to college. So I went to college. That was like an agreement we made, and I wanted to go. So it wasn't like it was a difficult agreement. I went to college online. I wanted to get a psychology degree, and my mom talked me out of it because at the time I had no plans to go to grad school. And so I ended up getting a business degree while I was taking every single acting class in LA known to mankind. I was doing casting director workshops. I had many different agents and managers because at the time it was like the wild, wild west, and a lot of them were not good. And I was very green and like learning how to be professional in the industry. And I was nannying at the time as like a side hustle, and I was working at 2 different juice bars and catering. And I was doing like everything I could to like learn the industry, learn the business, keep growing as an actor. I was trying to like build my network of peers, other actors, but also like casting directors, agents and managers. And then I was trying to make some cash. And I will say, as stressful as part of that time was, it was also wonderful. I felt very, very alive, and I felt so tired. Every day I remember waking up being like, oh my God, I get to do this again. Like I get to go to acting class today, and then I have a casting director workshop, and then I have an audition for this thing, and then I'm going to like work at the juice bar, and then, oh God, I have to like tell my boss I can't make it today from work, and he's going to be so pissed, and like all of the things. And so after years of this just on repeat, getting better, booking a couple things, small things, and trying to say yes to things. And, that's the other funny part. You're like, take all these classes and you feel so confident in class. And then you get on your first few sets and you're like, what the fuck is going on? There's nothing about set that class can really truly teach you. That's why every time when I have young people be like, I really want to like book my first guest star or co-star, and like they have not done the verticals or the short films or the student films or making their own content or anything. I'm like, do whatever you can to just start getting on even smaller sets, anything to understand like acting while blocking and trying to take direction when there's like a bajillion people looking at you. Like just do what you can to try to get on any level of a set because it is different. And trust me, once you book that guest star, co-star, series regular, big opportunity, you want to have some semblance of like, oh, I've been somewhat here before in this arena because it's just different. It is just a different preparation and process in your body that you have to like get into to make it work. So anyways, after doing this for years, things slowly started coming together. I ended up getting, I'll say, my second decent manager. I had actually a really good manager when I was 18 years old and I was so damn green. It didn't work out with him because I was doing well. I was even like on hold for like 2 different series regular roles and things like that. I was green and I wasn't ready and I didn't convert. And working at a big company like that, they do care about bookings and numbers. And so, yeah, like we were probably working together for 6 months, maybe a little bit longer than that. And I got let go. And then a series of bad representation. And then I got a decent manager and he built a really, really good team around me. Like I got a okay theatrical agent. I got a really good commercial agent, which was great because then starting to like build confidence in that arena, like getting callbacks and getting avails and like booking some commercials. And I, through him, had booked my first co-star. I had booked my first guest star on a show called Sorry for Your Loss opposite Elizabeth Olsen, which was so cool. I had done a couple like indie films that I got to see the full process, like from table reads to rehearsals to actually filming like on legit sets, even though, you know, it was like lower budget films, to like having a screening and actually like coming out on Redbox, if anyone remembers Redbox, or coming out on Netflix. A couple of things were clicking. And some of this was through him. Some of this was through connections that I had made being in LA and like meeting people through classes and workshops and different things like that. So it was like momentum was beginning and that was cool. And then this manager also got me my voiceover agent, which has been my voiceover agent ever since. And voiceover was a real game changer. And I also started creating my own content during this point of time and not creating content on like social media. My really good friend, Corinne Evans, who's an amazing filmmaker, her and I started writing together. We started producing short films. I also like partnered with one of my other good friends to do a short film on like a $500 budget and ended up getting into like a couple decent film festivals. Like I got into Holly Shorts. Corinne and I were like working together. People were hiring us to like film their music videos and film their own web series and their own short films. And we would also do these really cool actor reels for people where we would help someone go through a branding process and then design essentially 1, 2, 3, 4 scenes, however much they wanted, and write their scenes, find a location, hire the other actors. Corinne would run the camera. I would run the sound. She would give direction. I would sometimes give some feedback and notes. And then Corinne would edit everything and go through the post process and we would like deliver them. The goal was like a little clip of them actually acting. So it wasn't just like a self-tape reel that looked like it was from a TV show that they could be cast in or a movie they could be cast in. And we did really well. Actually, like we were making money. We were booked and busy. We were making our own projects as well. And so between like voiceover and feeling really confident creating my own content, like those two things kind of started firing off at the same time. It was just a very creatively fluid time. Like, and I think all this awesome creative energy, I was booking more, I was getting more avails. I started a writing class with Kimberly Kressel, who was unbelievable. And I wrote my first pilot script, actually understanding structure. I like fell in love with writing, specifically TV writing. I wrote a few other scripts that have been like semi-finalists in different writing competitions. I was helping my friends put together their pitch packages and helping them get representation. I was just like so all in. I look back on this time in my life so fondly. I loved every little second of it. It was just such a fun time and it just felt so creatively fulfilling. And also, like, while all of this was happening, voiceover started taking off. Like, I signed with my agency November 2015 and I booked my first job March 2016. It was a McDonald's radio spot. And literally like less than a week later, my agent calls me and he's like, "Hey, you're on hold for Toys R Us to play this cat." And then it was like less than a week after that, it was like, "Hey, you booked an eBay Mother's Day." It was crazy. Once it clicked, it was like the floodgates open. I've never experienced anything like that in my life besides when I've been creating my own content and like doing my own storytelling, where there was just so much like, oh, we did the thing. And then it was like, this film festival wanted us. And then this one, like, I've never felt that type of like, oh, things are working the way that it happened in voiceover to that like magnitude. So to actually feel like your phone was ringing off the hook was insane. Because that's very rarely the case. But at that time period, it was happening. And so, you know, I was driving all over LA to different studios. I was like booking not just like one-off jobs, but booking campaigns for Volkswagen and Simple Mobile and Old Navy and Toys R Us, and like getting to actually then integrate with these clients and companies because I'm working with the same team of producers for 3 or 6 months at a time. And it was the first time I was making money, like legit money. My first year, I made from March to December just under $50,000. And I was still side hustling. I, at this point, was just nannying at least 4 days a week. So I was making a ton of money nannying, making a ton of money doing voiceover. Corinne and I were making money with these actor reels and doing projects for other people. And I remember being like, I can't believe I made $49,000. Like, it felt like the craziest thing in the entire world. The next year I made double that. The next year I made double that in voiceover. And then I was like booking other acting stuff, and Corinne and I were still working together. And so like everything just really took off at that period of time, like really firing off on all cylinders. So I was on this high. I was sustaining this high. And mind you, I was like 25 at the time. Like this was like 22 to 25. This is like that period of my life. At this point, I felt like I had been like in the fucking grind and hustle for years. I'd been pursuing this for a long time professionally, and a lot had happened in like the decade prior to get me to that point. I was also, I think, experiencing a lot of just things personally, like the ending of my first true relationship. And Corinne and I started seeing like differences creatively. Like we wanted to do different things for like the projects that we were producing together. And I felt this stickiness come during this period of time. And even though I'd been to some therapy throughout this time, I started feeling a lot of unresolved shit that I hadn't worked on bubbling up. And I really started feeling the impacts of how much this was starting to take what felt as like freedom and fluidity creatively and like confidence in my creativity. And it was like the first time I remember starting to feel like I was questioning myself, or that this like unresolved shit was like restricting my voice because I was questioning myself. And so I didn't feel like that freedom to like say what I wanted to say. And that's the best way I could describe it, is this restriction of my voice, which is funny because I use my voice so much in all of my creativity. And I always felt that freedom and that alignment with it. But when this thing started to shift, and I gotta be honest with you, I can't even put my finger on exactly what the catalyst was for this like shift starting to happen, where I started questioning myself more, or like not feeling as confident, or like this other internal shit that wasn't resolved starting to bubble up. Like I don't know what even was the specific catalyst, but between trying to maintain this high that I was feeling and this bubbling up stuff inside of me becoming louder and louder and impossible to ignore, I was starting to get burned out, like badly burnt out. And I didn't know what burnout was. I don't think I ever felt burnout at that point before. So I wanted to keep refueling the creative beast inside of me, because at one point in time, that is what made me the happiest. And I loved being so full tilt and just doing all these different things and having so much going on all the time. But I was starting to feel legitimately tired and exhausted. It was not just exhaustion. It was like burnout level exhaustion. And I could tell some of what I was doing started not feeling as aligned as it once had, but my compass also felt really off. I was like, oh, like this thing that used to bring me a lot of happiness maybe isn't, like just working on the same types of projects that I once had, or a certain acting class that I used to love. And like, it was really just time for a change. But like, since my compass was off, it was like the first time in my life I felt like I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my own intuition and my own gut with any of this. And so I went back to therapy. Amen. Praise be. That was like so effing needed. So therapy helped a lot, but damn, therapy is also so confronting. And so going back to therapy really kind of evoked even more messiness at first. During this period of time, Corinne and I stopped working together. I stopped working with my manager, the person who was kind of like the gateway to a lot of these opportunities that I had. And him and I were close. Like we would go out to dinner and lunch. We all have some positives and negatives, right? So there were some things about his personality that started really triggering me and became really difficult for me. I was reacting to it, not responding to it. And it started feeling a little bit unhealthy, but it was really hard to even acknowledge that, because there were a lot of really good times that him and I had together. And he was very instrumental and helpful to a lot of my creative growth and my professional growth. And so I cut that tie, and my therapist at the time got pregnant and was starting a family. And so I also had to find a new therapist. There was a lot going on, and I was just trying to go through the motions, and I was really trying to not escape the work that I knew had to be done. And through all of this, COVID happened. Oh, we all remember that. And so internally, honestly, COVID was fucking great for me because it forced me to slow all the way down. I couldn't continue trying to like tap into this like full tilt creative thing that had given me so much life previously, but was like also leading to this burnout and also escapism for me trying to tap into like what I felt like was really needing the attention internally and what was going on. So COVID was the first time it gave me a permission slip to be like, do nothing or quiet down and figure out how to like go inward, and there's nowhere else for you to be. Truly, that's how it felt. A massive permission slip to slow the F down. And I wrote one of my favorite scripts during COVID. I started doing yoga at home, yoga with Adriene. Shout out. That was, whew. I truly feel like yoga with Adriene is like medicine for your body. Like every time I'd be done with one of her videos, I was like, I truly feel like I just took like some earthly medicine from this goddess. I started meditating consistently for the first time in my life. I kind of paused a lot of the theatrical acting for the first time since I was 10 years old. And VO was my main focus because that was kind of the only thing you were still able to do from home. And even that was like a huge learning curve, and starting to really try to journal and do a lot of this internal work that there's never an end. But this was unearthing some things that I never wanted to unearth, but I had to unearth to live the life that I want to live. And this was like the beginning of that process. So voiceover was uncomfortable during this time. We were auditioning for most of my VO career up until that point at DPN, at my agency. So like you're getting to see all your friends every day. You're getting to see your agents every day. You're going in with like these engineers and these booth directors who you end up loving, and they're giving you feedback. And it was like a very collaborative process. And then you're going into an actual studio where like you're talking to the receptionist and like having community there. And then you're working with these clients. Like there's just so much community, and all of that completely went out the window. Like you're recording auditions from home, you're recording jobs from home, which is like a lot more tech than I was used to, that I had to like figure that out. And I got much better at tech because I've needed to like survive. But like I was very hesitant and resistant to like the tech side of things. And now you're self-directing all of your auditions. I'm choosing my own takes. I'm editing my auditions together. And part of me was like very resistant of the whole thing. Started feeling like a chore more than something I looked forward to. And part of me was not bought all the way in. Like I tried, I kept showing up and doing it, but I was like in the back of my brain, like, I'm just going to keep going through the motions until things go back to the way things were. They never went back to the way things were. So eventually I had to actually figure out how to make this my new normal and for it to become fun. My husband and I at the time, he was my boyfriend at the time, were living in Marina Del Rey, which was beautiful. But as anyone who lived in California during COVID knows, we had like crazy lockdown compared to many, many other parts of the country. So this is like August of 2020, we made the decision to leave. I never wanted to leave LA. I never thought I would ever leave LA, but it's through many, many conversations and a lot of soul searching, leaving at this time felt like the right thing to do. And my husband is an only child, and his mom had a lot of work that needed to be done on the house. And he'd started the work in 2019. But like when he started the work, he has to like take 2 weeks off of his work to go like do the work on her house. And he was like, well, you and I are both working from home right now. Cause like I was just doing VO and writing and all those other things. And he was mainly working from home. So we're like, great, we can go back and help her. Like we can save money to maybe like buy a house or do something else, because we were not going to be saving money in LA the way things were at the time. And we can go like do all this work on our house. And thank God we came back, because the second we got back to Virginia Beach, that's where we moved in with his mom. I was 27 years old at this point in time. She started having all these crazy health issues. So thank God we were there. Nothing happens by accident. I truly believe that. So we were like helping her take care of these insane health issues that started coming up. We were getting her floors redone, her bathrooms redone, still auditioning. I will say the second I got to Virginia Beach, I booked like a bunch of voiceover jobs. And I think 'cause I was so uncomfortable and so off kilter, I wasn't like worried about my performance. I was just like, what is my life and like what is happening? And so I wasn't trying so hard. I was just like, okay, my whole life just completely shifted in a way I never anticipated. And it was like my choice to do it. COVID happened, but then I made this choice throughout COVID to make this change. So it was just like wildly uncomfortable. And we were never planning on staying in Virginia Beach. We were planning on trying to figure out where we wanted to go and where we wanted to try. We get this opportunity we could not say no to move to Miami. And Miami was on our list. It was unbelievable. And we decided, we're like, we cannot say no. And even if it sucks, we pack the car back up and we move. And it was like fully furnished, very inexpensive rent in one of the nicest neighborhoods in Miami, Coconut Grove. And we're like, great, we're packing our car. And it was a month-to-month lease in case something happened with my boyfriend at the time's mom, so we can come back if we needed to. And we like packed our car and moved to Miami. Coconut Grove, so beautiful. But it's a city of flashiness. It's loud. It's busy. It seems like everyone is so confident and loud about their confidence. And this was a time where my whole life felt like super off kilter. And I was in this like deep internal excavation of myself and trying on so many different identities, because now I wasn't just Maddie the actor. Before it was like Maddie the actor who lives in LA. And now I'm like, oh, I don't live in LA anymore. I'm really not theatrically acting. Like I maybe had a couple auditions during this time, but like it was slow. No one knew what the hell was going on. So it was like my whole identity was shaky at best. And now I'm in this city where there's just so much loud messaging of who people feel like they are. And there's a lot of status. There's a lot of like flashy status of like my car and my designer clothes. And it was just like a lot of things compounding at once. During this time, I had gotten my coaching certification. I had taken a business class. So I was like hustling hard to build my coaching business, and like things were going well, but like, damn, every dollar you were hustling for every dollar and every client. So like it was working, but damn hard. I was going relentlessly after voiceover. I was taking all sorts of classes and workshops and webinars and trying to find community. So trying to like figure things out. My husband went to, during this time we were in Miami, climb Mount Kilimanjaro. And he like had this idea of going to Kilimanjaro in his head. And he was like, what would your version of like Mount Kilimanjaro be? What's something like you want to tackle or to climb? And I remember feeling so sensitive when he asked me this question, because I was like, what is my Mount Kilimanjaro? Not even like, it doesn't even have to be a physical mountain, but like, what is the thing in my life right now that I'm like looking forward to? And I was doing all of these things. I was partially feeling fulfilled by some of them, but it was almost like I would have a coaching session with a client, and it would be like an amazing session with an amazing client. And then I would get out of the session, and it was like all of a sudden the second the session was over, all the voices would come up of like, what are you doing with your life? What do you want? The energy you give to your coaching clients, why can't you give that energy to yourself? And that's how every day went. Like I would go into the voiceover booth and I'd be like, what is happening? And I'd feel like good while I was doing the voiceover audition. And then I'd be editing it and I'd be like, I feel so unaligned and like disconnected. And same thing, I'd feel like so present during the coaching session. And then the coaching session would be over. And now I'm like, oh, and now here I am like sitting with myself. And I don't know what to do with myself. My brain feels like it's going through a warfare. I was going through therapy this whole time. And so like I had that base to help me try to make sense of all of these things, that it just felt like this massive flood of everything. It was the first time that I questioned if I wanted to act anymore. It was the first time that I felt just really not good with voiceover. Like I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and I was still making money. It's 2022 at this point. I was still working, not at the same level or capacity that I was, but like enough to support yourself. But like, it just didn't feel like it was clicking. Like I felt like I was sitting above myself, like watching myself. I wasn't like in my own body. And yeah, I would just walk around my neighborhood, like multiple walks a day, just to like try to slow my nervous system down and try to feel connected to myself. And I would like call my mom crying, or I'd call a friend crying, or I'd be like sending voice notes to Corinne. I have like this very vivid memory of like walking around Coconut Grove at like 7 a.m, her and I sending like voice notes back and forth and just talking about life, and me like explaining to her all of this weirdness that I was feeling. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Something just felt so damn off, and it really scared the shit out of me. I kept saying it felt like there was like a mist around me, like cloudy and foggy, and like I couldn't see 2 centimeters in front of my face. It was like the first time like my mom's like, well, do you want to go back to school to like get your master's? And then I talked to one of my friends who had actually left acting and went back to school to become a therapist. So I was like, oh my God, like, do I want to go to grad school to become a therapist? Because I was like already doing the coaching thing and I loved it. But like so much of my identity was still wrapped up in Maddie the actor, Maddie the voiceover actor, Maddie who lives in LA, even though I didn't live in LA anymore. Like I was still having this crazy identity excavation. My creative well was so dry. I was questioning myself with every thought that I had. So like, it wasn't fun because I would be like, is this good? Is this right? Is this like the right thing that I should be investing my time in? So my craft was suffering. My career was suffering. This was the first year I was not going to make my SAG health insurance, which it's like, I don't know, $28,000 or $29,000 for you to make your SAG health insurance. This year, 2022, I think I made $15,000 in voiceover. This was like the first year of my coaching business. Total, I made like $49,000 or $44,000 or something like that. Cause it was like very close to what I made my first year ever doing voiceover. And I was just like, holy hell. For me, I am someone who I've had to work a lot on my relationship with money and finances and wealth and all of that, especially at the time when I felt money stress. It really made it so hard for me to even engage with my creativity because I was like, oh my God, this thing that is so meaningful and important to me, my creativity, but like, how the hell am I supposed to pay my damn bills and like pay to go to therapy and all this stuff? So yeah, I was scared shitless and I did not trust myself. I was questioning myself every opportunity I got. I was just so desperate for like something to feel right and for it to feel like there was a right answer or a right thing or someone to give me do this, but like no one can, right? Because it's your life. So people can even give you suggestions, but like, you know when it's right or not. So even if someone's like, you should absolutely do this, like if you don't believe it, it doesn't really matter. And then you're living your life for somebody else anyways. I will say, even when my mind was spinning at 1,000,000 miles an hour, even when I was like, should I still be doing this? Does this make sense to still be doing this? Even though there was always like this flicker inside of me that didn't fully believe that I would give up, there was this low whisper that I started being able to hear that was like, if voiceover and acting were no longer part of your life, at least for this season, what would that look like? What would you feel like? How would that feel to make that decision? What does that mean to you? And when that low whisper started igniting, this was right around the same time my husband was going to hike Mount Kilimanjaro and he was going to be gone for 3 weeks. And so I went back to be with my parents in Chicago and spend time with my grandparents and just like be with my family during this time. And I was on a walk with my mom in the neighborhood that I grew up in. It's like kind of emotional because I just remember how lost I felt during this time. And I just every day was just trying to show up for myself. And every day I would like journal and meditate and just be like, please just keep showing up. Like, please, like one day the answer will be illuminated to you. Just like, please keep trying and keep showing up, even if everything feels wrong. And so my mom and I were on this walk in Vernon Hills, Illinois, where it's a northern suburb of Chicago where I grew up. And we'd walked this path so many times. I rode my bike as a kid and rollerbladed down this path with my friends my whole life. And my agent calls me Vince at DPN. I've always been very close with Vince and Trish and David, but like my phone wasn't ringing that often. So I was like, oh my God, Vince is calling me. And we had such a good conversation. He kind of was updating me on things with the business and like wanting to check in and kind of just do like a wellness check. And he's like, hey, how are you? And just wanted to see. And I was like, Vince, I am not well. This is just a really bad slump. And he was like, Maddie, everybody gets into a slump multiple times in their career. He's like, our $1 million clients have slump sometimes. It's not about if it happens, it's when, and it will happen again multiple times over the course of your career. And the only thing that matters is how long you choose to stay down for. And when he said that, I was like, oh my God, I kind of partially feel, because I feel so lost, like I'm choosing a little bit to stay in it because I didn't know what would get me out of it. And something about this conversation, I realized I couldn't book my way out of it. A booking at this point this year, like I did book some things, but like at this point it had been, let's say 6 months. I couldn't book my way out of this feeling. It was something like deeper than that. And in this conversation with him, he's like, okay, let's brainstorm. Like, what are some things you can do to shake it up and do something different? And he suggested that I book a session with Caroll Kimball, who is a voiceover casting director. She actually cast me in my first ever campaign. It was a Black Friday campaign for Volkswagen. I remember going into her office in Studio City. A lot of my clients love working with her and they like really talk about how she makes a big difference for them. I signed up as fast as I could, a meeting with Caroll Kimball. And so first thing she did, she's like, how are you? And she's like, really? How are you? And I was like, Caroll, not great. She's like, no, the reason I ask is because sometimes it's like we need to start the sessions with more of a life coaching approach because so much of our life impacts this creative career. And her and I had this like beautiful talk. And then we dove back into the work. And it was the first time I can remember where I was sitting in my house in Miami. I could remember like getting off that Zoom with her and being like, oh my God, I have not felt that like spark in my chest in so long, months at this point. And I felt relieved. I felt rejuvenated. I felt excited. I remember telling my husband, I was like, oh my God, it cleansed my creative soul, this session with her. And I will say I've had another moment with another casting director, not during this period of time, but during a different period of time, Tina Marasco. And both when I worked with Caroll and when I work with Tina Marasco, I always feel like my voiceover soul gets cleansed. I actually have like a group coaching with Tina tonight. And I literally told my mom, I'm like, my VO soul is getting cleansed tonight by Tina Marasco. And like when I worked with Caroll into that session, I felt like we rebuilt my audition process to go back to storytelling, go back to the things I loved, go back to that 10-year-old girl walking into a black box theater to do improv in Vernon Hills, Illinois. And I started to feel excited again. I started to feel the possibilities again. I started to just have way more fun. That bled into every area of my life. It was so weird. It was like after that session with her, that whisper was like, you're going to be okay. We don't have the answers. We are not going to have the answers. And like, I accepted that. After that session with Caroll, I accepted like, I'm not going to have the answers. And so what can I do? If I'm going to keep showing up and being in this game, what can I do? And I booked the biggest campaign of my voiceover life, of my voiceover career, a month later after that session with Caroll. And I cried because it was like life changing. And the thing was, it's like, I felt like myself again, not booking that job, like leading up to the booking of that job. And I don't think if I didn't have that session with Caroll that I could have booked that job. And I was working with that client for 2.5 years. So my longest campaign before that was like on and off for a year or like a full 6 months and then off for 6 months. I worked with this company for 2.5 years. I've worked in multiple cities. Every vacation I've been on, I would have a hold Monday through Friday at noon. And I would find out if I was working the day before. I was booking other campaigns then too. It amplified my professionalism. And I was already like very lucky to have worked a lot in my career by like a million. The things that I learned working with this voiceover client was masterful and instrumental. And it really is not the booking that pulled me out of it. I remember walking back into my booth, just feeling free again. And I started feeling bolder again. And my courage was dipping back into my life. I tapped back into believing it was possible for me. It was possible for me to feel creative and feel free and to work or not work. Like I started feeling the possibilities in myself again. I started believing that I could do great things. I started getting clarity on what I wanted to say yes and say no to, as opposed to trying to like do all the things. Cause I felt like if I said no to certain things that meant something about me, it was like taking a part of my identity away. And I was just much more in line with my energy levels and being like a yes or no right now does not mean it has to be a yes or no later. So I started saying yes to VO in a new way and no to theatrical acting for the time being. I started saying yes to podcasting and going all in on my podcast and no to writing scripts for now. Cause even throughout all this time, I always had some writing projects going on, but I felt I was pulled in too many different directions. I ultimately said yes to grad school in 2025. But that was always swirling in the back of my brain since 2020. I technically booked the campaign early 2023 in January, the voiceover campaign that like honestly changed my life. And then that campaign ended September 2025. And I started grad school, not knowing that that campaign was going to end August of 2025. So I started saying yes to grad school and no to a lot of other shit because grad school takes a lot of your time. It's a big commitment. Lots of sacrifice. And I'm just so grateful that I was in therapy for all of this because God, like it really just keeps getting better. I will never feel like I've arrived. The fact that I don't want to arrive is the gift. I feel parts of me have healed. I feel like so much more worthy than I did during this like time period of my life. And I'm just proud of myself for letting myself feel through it. I wanted to fight it with all my might. I wanted to try to change it. I wanted to try to like just feel better and feel like there was a fix and feel like I had the path forward for me to go down. And my partner kept telling me like the best thing I can do was take my foot off the gas and just like coast for a bit, which for me, it felt either better to floor it or like slam on the brakes. Like at that point in time did not make sense for my brain and it did not feel safe in my body to do that. And so I look back at that time and I was like, wow, 2022, I was in the middle of a worthiness and identity crisis. Who am I when I'm not creating and being validated for my creations? Because I was for a long time being validated on many different angles and from many different people. So it wasn't just who am I when I'm not creating, it's who am I when I'm not being validated for the things that I'm creating? Who am I if I'm not first and foremost Maddie the actor, but who is Maddie the person? And acting will always be a part of my identity. Acting will always be a slice of it, just like being a voiceover artist and being a life coach and being a soon to be therapist in a couple years and being a sports fan and sports lover and being a wife and being a good friend because I love my friends and I care a lot about them. But it was the first time where I'm like, Maddie the actor, Maddie the voiceover artist is a slice of my like identity pie. It's not the whole thing. I'm Maddie the person first and foremost. So I was in the messiest of middles. None of it felt cute. None of it felt comfortable. And if you're in a messy middle, and here's the thing, I've been in messy middles before. I will be in messy middles again. That one was just like probably the most profound one that I've ever felt up until this point of my adulthood. And so if you are in a messy middle right now, and if you're questioning your next move and it feels like nothing is working, and you want so desperately to hear a yes or have permission from someone else or even feel permission in yourself or to be like, oh, yes, this is the path forward that I want to take. And you want that surety and that hard clarity. If that's you right now, here's a few things that I want you to remember. You are not behind. You're not running late on someone else's timeline. You're building something that's entirely yours. And that takes longer and that looks messier, but it matters more. I was so used to walking on a certain path that felt like it had set benchmarks, right? Like get representation, book a co-star, make a certain amount of money, go from one-off VO jobs to campaigns. And like during this messy middle, it felt like someone had scribbled all over my timeline or like ripped it up and none of it made sense. And my benchmarks had like completely shifted or honestly like disappeared because I didn't have that set path or that set thing. I was like, I don't even know what I'm exactly striving for. I was just trying to strive to not feel so uncomfortable. I just felt like I shouldn't be feeling the way that I was feeling for as long as I had been feeling doing this creative career, which is so laughable because it's like we are so ever evolving as people. This creative career is so ever evolving. Our creativity is so fluid. So like laughable that I was like, oh, I've been doing this so long. Like me? I shouldn't be feeling this way. But you can never be behind when you're building something that's entirely yours and your timeline is entirely yours. And this creative career is entirely yours. So being behind is literally never a part of that equation. Remember that feeling bold and directionless at the same time is not a contradiction. It's what it feels like to be choosing yourself over a script that was never written for you. So sit with that when you're like, I feel like this boldness that like something's not right or something's not working or something is working, but I have like no validation or signs that like that thing should be working. And again, there's like that messiness of like, I feel like I have no direction, but I feel like bold or confident that like the direction I was taking isn't the right thing anymore. Sit with that. I feel like that's actually a really good sign. During my messy middle, it was as if I just realized I was the author of my own story. And I was almost desperately trying before this point to like hand someone else the pen. And I would have these feelings of boldness, especially with my coaching business. But then it was like the second I was like done with the coaching client and I was like back to just being by myself, I would have these feelings of directionlessness set in. And this is what it feels like to take back the pen on your own story when you're not just following someone else's blueprint, or you're not following your old blueprint and you're like taking the pen back and you're not looking to other people for validation or for their permission or answers. You're like this boldness in grabbing it back, but also like the direction isn't quite there yet. The next thing I want you to remember, being in the game still counts. You don't have to have it figured out to be a part of the game or even to be winning at the game. Showing up, staying present, throwing yourself fully in to whatever game or arena you're choosing, that's what matters. That is the win. This has been very emotional for me because during the time that I've been referencing in 2022, I remember I was still showing up. And I was reminding myself that I was still in the game, even though it was hard to lace up my shoes and just walk out onto the field. I had to accept that this was me being in the game as much as I was in the game previously where I was producing a lot more content and work and I was making a lot more money, both were being in the game. Both of those times I was still in the game. So what being in the game looks like for you might change seasonally and based on what's going on in your life. And that's okay. Accepting those ebbs and flows is what keeps you in the game. Trying to always push for a certain level of output, that is what energetically drains you. And that's when you find like that misalignment within yourself. I want you to remember, you don't need permission to storm the field. Nobody is coming to hand you the life that you want. The most powerful move you can make is deciding today, right now, either that you're in it and in it fully or that you're out. Just make a decision of what this season is going to be like for yourself. Booking a job wasn't going to be the thing that saved me. I had to start mining my life for ways to believe in myself again and believe in the possibility of having amazing things happen to me and for me and to inform my career. Nobody was coming to give me the answer or sign a permission slip of like, you should go back to grad school or you should keep acting or you shouldn't keep acting. Like I had to make all of these decisions for myself and what fields I was going to storm and the arenas that I was going to play in. No one can make that decision but you. And lastly, I want you to remember you always got you. You start the journey with yourself and you end this journey with yourself. Truly, from the moment you were born to the moment you leave this earth, every moment of your journey will be spent with you. So how can you make a commitment to never abandon yourself, especially in the moments when everything feels uncertain and the next step is so not clear? How can you always have your own back? I really appreciate you listening to way more of my story than I was anticipating on sharing, specifically in the acting time of my life. But I feel like context is important to kind of get you into the period of my life that just felt really, really brutal at the time. But now I look back on it with such a fondness because it was such a springboard for so many great things in my life. And this period of time is where so much of my resilience was built. And it's truly where I feel like my self-trust journey started. And so save this episode for the hard days, share it with someone that you feel like needs to hear it. Know that you are never alone. Know that if you are in a messy middle, that's okay. It is just the middle of the story for this season of your life. And you always got yourself. You always, always have your own back. I believe in you and I'm rooting for you today and always. You're the real hero if you've made it this far. Thanks so much for hanging out today, and check out the show notes for any resources or cool info mentioned in today's episode or places to follow along if you want to hang out some more. I'm rooting for you today and always. Stay messy.